Let's head out now to California. Lawmakers there today approved the first state-funded guaranteed income plan in all the United States, $35 million for monthly cash payments to qualifying pregnant women and young adults who recently left foster care. No restrictions on how they spend it. Right now, we're bringing in Jim Pugh to discuss all of this. Jim, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now. You are with the Universal Income Project. What was your reaction to the news today? This is quite stunning for your movement.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew. The news today is really great, that we're excited that this program is moving ahead. And this program is really building on the success that we've seen out of privately funded guaranteed income and universal basic income pilot programs, both in California and around the country. We've seen repeatedly that for a lot of people who are struggling today, when you provide them with an underlying financial floor, give them a bit of assistance every month, it really makes a huge difference in their opportunity both to get by and to get ahead. That this is really giving them an opportunity to pursue new pathways and become more productive members of society.
You know, after today, Jim, you've seen now one state. Do you think more states will follow suit, especially these more progressive states? I'm thinking, Oregon, Massachusetts, New York. What do you think on that?
I think it's very likely that right now, separate from the funding in California, there are new pilot programs for UBI and for guaranteed income. They're launching in states all across the country. The Mayors for Guaranteed Income Initiative has mayors from big cities like St. Paul, like Atlanta, like Philadelphia, like Newark, who have all bought in to launching these sorts of programs in our cities. Some of these are coming solely from private dollars. Some of them are involving some city funds. But what we're seeing is that state legislatures across the country are also paying attention. And with California putting this money here, I expect we'll see more to follow.
And Jim, the vote today was unanimous and bipartisan. Did that strike you as unusual there in California?
Not necessarily. There's been a lot of negotiation that's gone into the state budget that this is part of. And so folks have had really a chance to engage and weigh in. And so what you see here is actually the result of quite a few months of work across the aisle and amongst the different legislatures in different regions of California to figure out a solution that folks feel like will work across the state.
Now, let's talk about kind of the parameters of what was done today in the legislature. It's not for everyone. This is specifically toward young adults and pregnant women. Now, essentially, we know California is experiencing a very large budget surplus at the moment, Jim. Would this be for life, or does this have kind of a shelf life on it? Will there be an end date eventually for this, or will more people, buy in as the population in California grows? So, what do we know about kind of those specifics of this?
So this is, just to be clear, the $35 million is specifically for pilot programs. So none of this funding is going to go into permanent new programs across the state. As you mentioned, there's a priority given to pregnant women and to youth aging out of foster care, since those are two different groups where there's already been some work around providing folks with a basic income that has shown some very promising results. But that's not all the funding here. Some of the additional parts of the $35 million are going to be used for other programs, looking at what sort of impact this little bit of extra cash assistance can have on people in different situations in life, and whether that can make a big difference as far as them being able to overcome obstacles they're facing or generally get ahead.
Jim, this idea is relatively new. Do we have much data on if it has helped, down the road, long term in having more economic stability, security with people who are, essentially starting with nothing?
Well, the recent conversation around universal basic income is fairly new, but we've had somewhat similar programs in parts of the U.S. for a long time. In particular, the state of Alaska has their permanent fund, and every year it pays out a permanent fund dividend to every resident of Alaska, no matter how old you are, no matter what your income is. Everyone there is getting a check every year, generally between $1,000 and $2,000. So it's not as large as some of these programs, but when folks have looked at what impact that's had, and that's been happening for 40 years now, they've seen generally that it's led people to be healthier, that it's made it easier to attain education. In fact, that it's even allowed people to be able to pursue new forms of work So that's all evidence that we're looking at here as far as what sort of impact we might see in the longer term from these sorts of programs.
And Jim, I just want to kind of go over what some critics of universal basic income, kind of the bullet points that they espouse all the time, that this disincentivizes people from even entering the workforce, that this is, is this just meant to be, supplemental to their existing income? Will it be allowed for those on, say, unemployment benefits to get that supplemental of universal basic income as well in a state like California? Can you kind of go line by line and maybe dispel some of those notions out there about universal basic income?
Sure, and I'm glad you asked that, Andrew, since that question does come up a lot. The big concern that folks often have is, what does this mean for people's participation in the workforce? And we actually have some fairly recent data coming out of the basic income program that was run in Stockton, California, that was providing 125 families there with a basic income over 2 years. And they actually compared what happened to those folks who were receiving the basic income to similar folks there who weren't. And they found people receiving the money actually gained employment at a higher rate. And that may sound counterintuitive, but what they heard from the people participating was that this actually gave them the flexibility and freedom to be able to go out and look for something better. So often people are stuck in these low-wage jobs, sometimes working 2 jobs at once, and they don't even have the time to be able to improve their situations. And so this little bit of extra support actually opened that door for them and allowed them to find something better out there, and to gain better long-term employment. As for other concerns, I'm sorry, I don't remember all the ones that you asked there, but yeah.
No, Jim, we can move on, but because some other critics would say, programs like this in a state like California that is experiencing a budget surplus right now have even said that they're worried that programs like this could become very bloated, could eventually become insolvent, much like the path that Social Security is on at the federal level. So what do you say to those critics who say, this shouldn't be for life, there should be limits, there should be restrictions on who gets this and when they get it?
Well, I think that there's a separate question around what does it look like to have fiscal responsibility in our programs. But as far as where you're getting a high bang for your buck, I think that programs like basic income are pretty near to the top, because what we see is that this really acts as an investment, that people receiving the support over the course of some number of years, it's setting them up to become more productive in society, to be able to fully integrate into our economy and to actually then be contributing back. And so this is actually, it's not just an expenditure, it is something that is investing in our larger future. And so that if your focus really is the financial side of this, that this is actually a great place to be putting your energy.
And just a few more questions, Jim. Thanks so much for being with us. But, you mentioned Stockton, California, and that was kind of this first really case study and test. And we've seen what their plans are there in the state of California and the city of Stockton. But I just want to bring up one of the main proponents of universal basic income. You probably know their name, of Andrew Yang, because he just ran for mayor of New York City. He ran for president on the Democratic ticket as well in the primary. And kind of one of the main, arguments that he was running on as a mayoral candidate was giving universal basic income to one of the most progressive cities in the country, not if the world, New York City. He barely made it in the ranked choice voting. What do you think that says about that idea? Do you think we're putting too much stock into his electoral outcome there?
I think that there's policy ideas and there's people. I think there was a lot that went into that mayoral race beyond just the idea of universal basic income. I will say that New York actually is launching a couple different basic income pilot programs. So it's not that there isn't any interest there or that people don't see it as something that can be valuable. The devil's in the details as far as how do you make this work in different situations. But I think that a single electoral outcome doesn't tell you a whole lot about how effective this program actually is.
All right, Jim Pugh from the Universal Income Project. We'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming here on Live Now from Fox. We'll be following this story to see if any more states do follow suit, and cities for that matter.
Thanks, Andrew.